Admiral Tae-yang stood in the observation deck of the Mars shipyard, his hands clasped behind his back. Through the thick glass he could see the red planet below, its dusty surface dotted with human settlements. Behind him a screen flickered with images he had watched 100 times, images he would never stop watching. Earth was burning. The footage had been captured by a cargo ship fleeing the system 3 weeks ago. Tae-yang watched as bright white lines descended from orbit, cutting through the atmosphere like falling stars. But these were not stars. They were plasma charges from the Velic Empire's war fleet. Each one carried enough destructive power to level an entire city. New York vanished in a flash of light. Tokyo followed seconds later. Then Paris, Mumbai, Rio de Janeiro. The cities of Earth disappeared one after another, each death marked by a mushroom cloud that rose into the sky. Tae-yang's jaw tightened as he watched. His wife had been in Seoul. His daughter had been visiting her grandmother in Busan. Both cities were gone now, turned to ash and glass. The Velic had given humanity 1 hour to surrender. They had broadcast their message across every frequency, in every language. Submit to the Velic Empire or be removed from the galaxy. The words were cold, efficient, without emotion. The human government had refused. They had believed that the Galactic Council would intervene, that the ancient laws of war would protect them. They were wrong. The Velic fleet had opened fire exactly 1 hour after the ultimatum. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it ended, Earth was a scorched ruin. 12 billion people had lived on humanity's homeworld. Now the best estimates suggested that fewer than 100 million had survived in deep bunkers and underground shelters. Another 200 million humans had been scattered across the solar system and beyond when the attack came. Mining colonies, research stations, merchant vessels, military ships on patrol, that was all that remained of humanity. 340 million souls. Tae-yang heard footsteps behind him. He did not turn around. He knew who it was by the sound of her walk. Admiral, Dr. Hana said quietly. The fleet captains are assembled. They are waiting for you. Tae-yang nodded slowly. He kept his eyes on the screen, watching Earth burn for the 101st time. Tell me, Doctor, do you believe in mercy? Hana was silent for a moment. She stepped closer to stand beside him, her own eyes finding the screen. I used to, she said. Before they killed my family. Before they turned our homeworld into a graveyard. The Galactic Council has sent a message, Tae-yang said. They offer mediation. They say the Velic Empire has agreed to pay reparations. Territory will be given to us as compensation. They speak of peace and healing. Peace, Hana repeated, and the word sounded bitter in her mouth. They watched while Earth burned. The Council did nothing. Their ship sat at the edge of the system and observed. They filed reports and took notes while our people died. Tae-yang finally turned from the window. His face was carved from stone, showing no emotion. But his eyes were dark with something that went beyond anger. I have made my decision, Doctor. I wanted you to hear it first before the others. Hana looked at him, waiting. Humanity will not accept the Council's mediation, Tae-yang said. We will not take their compensation. We will not sign their treaties or bow to their authority. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was iron. We will have revenge, total, complete, and absolute. The Velic wanted to erase us from the galaxy. Instead, we will erase the memory of mercy from their minds. A small smile touched Hana's lips. It was not a pleasant smile. Then you will need weapons, Admiral. Weapons that the galaxy has never seen before. Can you build them? I can build them, Hana said. Give me the resources and the time, and I will create things that will make the Velic regret they ever heard the word human. Tae-yang nodded. Then let us begin. The conference room was filled with grim faces. Every ship captain who could reach Mars had come. They represented what remained of humanity's military power. 53 warships of various sizes, a dozen carriers, 20 supply vessels. It was not a large fleet by galactic standards. The Velic Empire alone commanded thousands of ships, but Tae-yang had not called this meeting to count their strength. He had called it to forge their purpose. Captain Ji-won sat near the front, her face pale but composed. She had been a diplomat once, assigned to the Galactic Council to represent human interests. She had spent 5 years arguing for humanity's rights, negotiating trade agreements and building alliances. All of that meant nothing now. Her husband and 2 children had been on Earth during the attack. She had received no word from the bunkers. In her heart, she knew they were gone. Beside her sat Lieutenant Minho, the youngest officer in the room. He was barely 25 years old, but he had already earned a reputation as one of humanity's most skilled fighter pilots. His hands rested on the table, steady and calm, but Ji-won could see the rage burning behind his eyes. Minho's entire extended family had lived on Earth. Parents, siblings, cousins, friends, all gone. Tae-yang entered the room and conversation ceased. Every eye turned to him. He walked to the head of the table and stood there, straight and tall. 3 weeks ago, the Velic Empire committed genocide against humanity, Tae-yang said. His voice carried clearly through the silent room. They destroyed our homeworld. They murdered 12 billion of our people. They did this because they believed we were weak. They believed we would submit or die. He paused, looking at each face in turn. The Galactic Council has offered us mediation. They suggest we accept reparations and move forward with peace. They speak of the Greater Peace Protocol that has maintained stability in the galaxy for 800 years. Tae-yang's hands gripped the edge of the table. I have considered their offer carefully. I have weighed the options, and I have made my decision. The room held its breath. Humanity will reject the Council's mediation, Tae-yang said. We will not accept their compensation. We will not forgive what was done to us. His voice grew harder, colder. The Velic Empire wanted to erase humanity from existence. They failed. We survived, and now we will teach them the price of their failure. Ji-won leaned forward. You are talking about war, Admiral. All-out war against an empire that has thousands of ships and controls dozens of worlds. They nearly destroyed us when they caught us by surprise. What chance do we have in open conflict? Every chance, Tae-yang said. Because we will not fight by their rules. We will not honor the Council's laws of civilized warfare. The Velic showed us the truth. In this galaxy, mercy is weakness. Compassion is foolishness. There is only one law that matters. The strong survive and the weak perish. Minho spoke for the first time, his voice cold and flat. What are your orders, Admiral? Tae-yang straightened. We will consolidate our forces. Every human ship in the galaxy will be recalled. Every resource will be directed toward one goal, the complete destruction of the Velic Empire. We will hit their supply lines, destroy their colonies, and burn their worlds. We will give them no mercy, no quarter, no chance to surrender. And when the Galactic Council tries to stop us, Ji-won asked, they will not, Tae-yang said, because they will be too afraid. Once we show them what humanity is capable of when pushed beyond the breaking point, they will understand that it is better to stay out of our way. He looked around the table once more. This war will not be quick. It will not be easy. Many of us will die before it ends, but we will not stop until the Velic Empire is broken and the galaxy remembers what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Ji-won stood, followed by Minho, then every officer in the room. They stood at attention, their faces set with determination. For Earth, Ji-won said quietly. For Earth, the others echoed. Tae-yang nodded. Dismissed. Prepare your ships. The war begins now. The Jupiter shipyards had never been this busy. Every dock was filled with ships in various states of repair and modification. Civilian cargo vessels were being fitted with military-grade weapons. Mining ships had their industrial lasers rerouted to serve as crude but effective siege cannons. Even passenger liners were stripped down and converted into troop carriers. Dr. Hana walked through the main research facility, her tablet showing streams of data from a dozen different experiments. She had not slept more than 3 hours in any night since the war began. Her team worked around the clock and she pushed them hard, but no harder than she pushed herself. The guilt ate at her constantly. While she worked on weapons, her parents' bodies were rotting somewhere in the ruins of Earth. She had not been able to recover them. She had not been able to say goodbye. All she could do was channel her grief into something useful. Something deadly, Doctor, one of her assistants called out. The quantum entanglement test is ready. Hana nodded and followed him to the testing chamber. Inside, 2 small probes floated in a magnetic field. They were linked through quantum entanglement, a connection that existed outside normal space-time. For years, scientists had tried to weaponize this phenomenon. All had failed. The energy requirements were too high and the effect was too unstable. But Hana had a different approach. She was not trying to create a weapon. She was trying to create a tool. A way for ships to phase through solid matter for brief moments. Initialize the test, she ordered. The technician activated the system. Energy flowed through the probes. For a split second, one probe flickered and vanished. When it reappeared, it was on the other side of a solid steel barrier. Hana felt her heart race. It worked. Run the test again. Increase the mass. They ran the test 15 more times with increasingly larger objects. Each time, the object successfully phased through the barrier. The effect only lasted a fraction of a second, but that would be enough. A warship could phase through enemy shields, fire its weapons from inside the shield perimeter, then phase back out before the enemy could respond. Prepare a full-scale test, Hana said. I want a fighter equipped with this system within the week. One of her assistants hesitated. Doctor, we do not know the long-term effects on living tissue. The pilot could be harmed. Then we will find a volunteer, Hana said coldly. This war will not be won by playing it safe. Across the facility, Captain Jiwan was training the new recruits. They were mostly civilians who had volunteered after Earth's destruction. Miners, farmers, merchants, teachers, none of them had military training. But all of them had lost someone. And all of them wanted revenge. Jiwan watched them run through combat drills. They were clumsy and slow. Under normal circumstances, it would take years to turn them into proper soldiers. But circumstances were far from normal. Faster, she barked. The Velic will not wait for you to catch your breath. They will kill you while you hesitate. A young man stumbled during the drill. Jiwan walked over to him, her face hard. What is your name? Deho, he gasped. I am sorry, Captain. I will do better. Why are you here, Deho? He looked up at her, confused. To fight, Captain. Wrong answer, Jiwan said. You are here to kill. Every Velic you encounter is your enemy. They are not soldiers doing their duty. They are murderers who destroyed our world. You do not fight them. You exterminate them. Do you understand? Deho's face hardened. Yes, Captain. Then get up and run it again. Jiwan knew she was changing these people. She was taking away their compassion, their mercy, their humanity. The tactics she taught them were brutal and ruthless. No prisoners, no surrender, total warfare with no rules and no limits. It went against everything she had believed in as a diplomat. But diplomacy had failed. Words had not stopped the Velic. Peace treaties had not protected Earth. Only force mattered now. Only strength. Late that night, Jiwan returned to her quarters. She sat on her bed and stared at the photo on her wall. Her husband smiled at her from the image, holding their 2 children. The photo had been taken on Earth 2 years ago, during a family vacation to the coast. Jiwan reached out and touched the image. Her hand trembled. Then she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, forcing the emotion down, locking it away. She could not afford to feel, not yet. Not until the Velic paid for what they had done. In the fighter pilot training center, Minho sat in a medical chair while technicians attached sensors to his head. Around him, other pilots waited nervously. They had all volunteered for the experimental neural interface program. The interface would allow them to control their fighters with thought alone, removing the delay of physical controls. Reaction times would be instant. Combat effectiveness would increase dramatically, but the surgery was dangerous. The neural pathways had to be modified. Brain tissue would be altered. 4 pilots had already died during the procedure. Are you ready, Lieutenant? The medical officer asked. Minho nodded. He felt no fear. Fear was a luxury for people who still had something to lose. He had lost everything on Earth. His parents, his sister, his friends, even his dog, all gone, turned to ash in the Velic bombardment. Now he existed for one purpose only, to kill as many Velic as possible before he died. Begin the procedure, Minho said. The drugs flowed into his system, and consciousness faded away. In Admiral Taeyang's office, a message arrived from the Galactic Council. He read it with cold eyes. The Council requested an urgent meeting. They wanted to send an ambassador to discuss humanity's recent actions. Human ships had begun raiding Velic supply lines, destroying cargo vessels and mining outposts. The Council deemed these attacks inappropriate and counterproductive to peace efforts. Taeyang composed his response carefully. He agreed to meet with the Council's ambassador. He even specified a time and place, but he had no intention of listening to their lectures about peace and stability. The ambassador arrived 3 days later. His name was Veln, a member of the insectoid Quellic species. He was a senior diplomat with decades of experience in conflict resolution. He truly believed he could convince humanity to stand down. Tai Yang received him in the main conference hall on Mars. The room was filled with human military officers and civilian leaders. Veln stood before them, his multiple eyes scanning the crowd. "Honored humans," Veln began, "I come with a message from the Galactic Council. We understand your pain. We recognize the tragedy that has befallen your species. But continued violence will only lead to more suffering." Tai Yang said nothing. He simply watched the ambassador with those cold, dark eyes. "The Council has negotiated an agreement with the Velic Empire," Veln continued. "They have agreed to substantial reparations. 3 systems will be ceded to human control. The Velic military commanders responsible for the attack will face trial. Justice will be served." "Justice," Tai Yang repeated softly. "Yes," Veln said, encouraged. "Justice through proper legal channels. The Council will ensure—" "Tell me, Ambassador," Tai Yang interrupted. "Where was the Council when Earth burned? Where were your warships when 12 billion humans died?" Veln's antenna twitched. "The Council received word of the attack too late to intervene. By the time our forces arrived—" "You watched," Tai Yang said, his voice cutting like a blade. "Your ship sat at the edge of the system and observed. You filed reports. You took notes. You did nothing. The protocols required—" "Silence," Tai Yang commanded. He stood and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You come here to speak of justice. You offer us systems and trials as if that could balance the scales. As if 3 planets could replace our homeworld. As if executing a few commanders could bring back 12 billion dead." Veln tried to respond, but Tai Yang raised his hand. "Humanity rejects your offer. We reject your mediation. We reject the authority of the Galactic Council." Tai Yang stepped closer to the ambassador. "You want to know what justice looks like to us? Justice is the Velic Empire burning as Earth burned. Justice is their children screaming as our children screamed. Justice is total, complete revenge. You cannot mean—" Veln started. Tai Yang made a gesture. 2 guards stepped forward and seized the ambassador. Veln struggled, his insectoid limbs clicking in panic. "Wait. I have diplomatic immunity. The Council will watch," Tai Yang said. Just as they watched Earth die, he nodded to the guards. They dragged Veln to the center of the room. Cameras broadcast the scene across the galaxy, to every Council world, to every species that had sat idle while humanity burned. Jiwan stepped forward. Her face showed no emotion as she raised her weapon. Veln's eyes widened in terror, and then the shot rang out. The ambassador fell to the ground, dead. Silence filled the conference hall. Then Tai Yang turned to the cameras. "This is our message to the Galactic Council and to the Velic Empire. Humanity does not negotiate with those who watched us burn. We do not accept your laws or your justice. From this moment forward, there is only one law in this galaxy, the law of vengeance." He ended the transmission. Across the room, Hana felt a chill run down her spine. They had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They had declared war not just on the Velic, but on the entire established order of the galaxy. But as she looked around at the other faces in the room, she saw only determination, only cold, hard resolve. The war had truly begun, and humanity would show the galaxy what it meant to push. The first strike fleet entered Velic territory 6 weeks after the execution of Ambassador Veln. 50 human warships, moving in complete silence through the darkness of space. Admiral Tai Yang commanded from the bridge of the flagship Retribution, watching the tactical display with patient eyes. The Velic had expected humanity to attack their military bases. They had fortified their core systems, pulling back their fleets to defend their most important worlds. It was a logical defensive strategy. It was also exactly what Tai Yang wanted them to do. He had no intention of attacking their strongholds. "Not yet. Target confirmed, Admiral," the tactical officer reported. "Velic mining colony, designation Targus 7. Population approximately 50,000. Minimal military presence. Weapons range in 3 minutes," another officer added. Tai Yang nodded slowly. He felt no satisfaction, no anticipation, only a cold, hollow necessity. The Velic had taught humanity this lesson. They had shown that civilian populations were acceptable targets. That genocide was simply another tool of war. "Begin the broadcast," he ordered. On every frequency, in every language, the message went out. It was not directed at the Velic colony. It was directed at the entire galaxy, at every species that had done nothing while Earth burned. Captain Jiwan's face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. Her voice was flat, emotionless as she read the prepared statement. "This is Captain G1 of the Human Defense Forces. We are about to destroy the Velic colony at Targus 7. All 50,000 inhabitants will die. We make no apologies. We seek no justification. This is simply balance. The Velic killed 12 billion of our people. We will take payment in blood until the debt is satisfied." The transmission ended. The human fleet opened fire. The mining colony had no shield strong enough to stop military-grade weapons. The plasma charges cut through the habitat domes like paper. Atmosphere vented into space. The colonists had perhaps 30 seconds of warning before death arrived. Some tried to reach the evacuation pods. They did not make it. Others huddled with their families, holding their children close. The human weapons did not distinguish between soldiers and civilians, between adults and children. The entire colony was wiped away in less than 5 minutes. When it was over, Taeyang recorded the destruction on every sensor, from every angle. The footage would be broadcast across the galaxy. Let them see what humanity had become. "Next target," he said quietly. Over the next 3 months, the human fleet moved through Velic territory like a plague. They struck supply stations, cargo ships, research facilities, and remote colonies. They took no prisoners. They accepted no surrenders. Every Velic they encountered died. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions. Representatives from 100 species condemned humanity's actions. They called it barbarism, terrorism, genocide. They threatened sanctions and military intervention, but they did nothing. Their fleet stayed in friendly space, watching from a distance, because deep down they were afraid that if they intervened, humanity would turn its rage on them next. Some species began secretly providing intelligence to the human forces. The locations of Velic supply routes, the schedules of cargo shipments, the coordinates of hidden bases. Not because they supported humanity, but because they wanted to stay on the winning side, or at least avoid being on the losing side. On the bridge of a carrier vessel, Minho prepared for another mission. The neural interface surgery had changed him in ways that went beyond the physical. He could think faster now, process information with machine precision. But something had been lost in the exchange. The things that made him human were fading away. He climbed into his fighter, and the moment he settled into the seat, his consciousness expanded. He could feel the ship around him, every system, every weapon, every sensor. The fighter was not something he piloted. It was something he was. "Go Squadron, prepare for launch," the carrier commander ordered. "Your target is a Velic supply convoy. 12 cargo ships with fighter escort. Eliminate all targets. No survivors." Minho's squadron consisted of 20 fighters, all equipped with Dr. Hana's ghost drive technology. They could phase through solid matter for brief moments, making them nearly impossible to intercept. The Velic had started calling them phantom demons, spirits that appeared from nowhere and vanished before weapons could lock on. The squadron launched into the void. Minho led them toward the convoy's coordinates, his enhanced mind calculating trajectories, fuel consumption, and weapon load simultaneously. He felt nothing. No fear, no excitement, no anger. Only the cold mathematics of death. The convoy appeared on sensors. The Velic escort fighters moved to intercept, but they were far too slow. Minho's squadron activated their ghost drives and phased directly through the enemy formation. For a fraction of a second, they existed in a space between spaces, overlapping with normal matter but not quite part of it. They reappeared inside the convoy's defensive perimeter, weapons already firing. The cargo ships exploded one after another. The Velic fighters tried to respond, but the human ships phased out and reappeared behind them. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Minho's kill counter ticked upward. 372. 373. The numbers meant nothing to him. They were just data points in an endless equation. "Ghost Squadron, return to carrier," the commander ordered. "Mission complete." Minho piloted his fighter back toward the carrier. As he flew through the debris field, he saw bodies floating in the void. Velic crew members who had been blown out when their ships exploded. Some of them were still alive, writhing in the vacuum, dying slowly. He felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, no guilt. Just empty coldness where his emotions used to be. On the surface of Thalos, Captain G1 led ground forces in a campaign that had lasted 6 months. The Velic had turned this world into a fortress, with massive underground bunkers and automated defense systems. Taking it should have been impossible, but G1 had time. and patience, and an army of soldiers who were willing to die for revenge. The siege was brutal. Human forces pushed forward meter by meter, bunker by bunker. The Velic defenders fought hard, but they were not prepared for humanity's tactics. The humans used chemical weapons banned by the Galactic Council. They collapsed tunnels with defenders still inside. They flooded underground sections with fire and poisonous gas. When the Velic commander finally offered surrender, G1 stood before him in the command bunker. He was old, this commander. His scales were dull with age and his eyes showed the weight of too many battles. "We surrender," he said in broken human language. "Please, no more death. We will give you the planet." "We will give you anything." G1 looked at him. She remembered being a diplomat. She remembered believing in treaties and negotiations. She remembered thinking that wars could be ended with words. "No," she said simply. The commander's eyes widened. "But we surrender. The laws of war. Your empire destroyed Earth without giving us a chance to surrender," G1 said. "You murdered 12 billion people who wanted only peace. You will receive the same mercy you showed us." She raised her weapon and shot him. Then she turned to her soldiers. "Clear every bunker. Kill everyone you find. No prisoners. No exceptions." Her soldiers obeyed without question. They had learned their lessons well. The Velic defenders who tried to surrender were cut down. Those who hid were hunted through the tunnels like animals. By the time the sun set on Thalos, every Velic on the planet was dead. G1 stood on the surface looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there her children were buried under the ruins of Earth. She had not avenged them. Not yet. The number of dead Velic was still too small. The debt was not yet paid. At night she dreamed of her family. But in her dreams they were screaming, burning, dying over and over again. She would wake up gasping, her face wet with tears she did not remember crying. But in the morning she would lock those feelings away and return to the war. Because feelings were a luxury she could not afford. Dr. Hana worked in her laboratory, synthesizing the final components of her new weapon. The Reaper virus, she called it. It was designed specifically for Velic physiology, targeting their unique genetic structure. Once infected, a Velic would die slowly over the course of 3 weeks. The symptoms were agonizing. Burning fever, organ failure, madness. She had created it in response to intelligence reports that the Velic were developing a bioweapon of their own, something designed to finish off the remaining human colonies. Taeyang had initially refused to authorize the Reaper virus, calling it too cruel. But when the evidence of the Velic bioweapon became undeniable, he changed his mind. Now Hana stood over the final batch, watching the viral cultures multiply in their containment vessels. This weapon could wipe out the entire Velic species if deployed widely enough. It was genocide in a bottle. She thought about her parents, about her sister and her sister's children, all dead in the Earth bombardment. Would they have wanted this? Would they have approved of what she had become? She did not know. She would never know. All she could do was continue forward. Because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and feeling meant breaking. Hana packaged the Reaper virus for deployment and sent it to the military command, another weapon in humanity's growing arsenal, another step down the path they had chosen. The human armada gathered at the edge of Velic space, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 300 warships, 50 carriers, and countless support vessels. Every ship that could fight had been called to this moment. Every weapon had been prepared. Every soldier knew this would be the final battle. Velic Prime hung in the distance, a beautiful blue and green world surrounded by 3 moons. 18 billion Velic called this planet home. It was the heart of their empire, the birthplace of their civilization. Cities covered the continents, gleaming towers that reached toward the sky. Orbital stations dotted the space around it, along with defensive platforms bristling with weapons. Admiral Taeyang stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the planet through the view screen. He had imagined this moment countless times over the past year. In his mind, he had rehearsed what he would say, what he would do. But now that the moment had arrived, he felt only a hollow emptiness. "All ships report ready." "Admiral," his tactical officer said. "The Velic defense fleet is moving to intercept," another officer added. 2,000 ships. They are forming a defensive sphere around the planet. Taeyang nodded slowly. The Velic had recalled every vessel they could spare. This would be their last stand. They would fight to protect their homeworld, just as humanity would have fought to protect Earth. But Earth had not been given that chance. The Velic had attacked without warning, without mercy, without hesitation. "Open a channel to the Velic Emperor," Taeyang ordered. The communication was established. On the screen appeared an elderly Velic, his scales a deep purple that showed his age and status. Emperor Tharn had ruled the Velic Empire for 40 years. He had ordered the attack on Earth. His decision had led to this moment. "Admiral Taeyang," the Emperor said. His voice was weary, resigned. "I know why you have come." "Then you know I will show you the same mercy you showed us," Taeyang replied. "My military advisors told me humanity would submit," Tharn said quietly. "They said your species was weak, that you would surrender rather than face extinction. I listened to them. I gave the order to fire on your world. That decision will haunt me until I die." "It will not haunt you long," Taeyang said coldly. "Please," Tharn said, and for the first time his composed mask cracked. "I am not asking for myself. I accept my fate. I deserve whatever punishment you wish to inflict. But my people, the civilians on that planet, they did not order the attack on Earth. They are innocent." "So were the children on Earth," Taeyang said. "The babies who burned in their cribs. The families who died holding each other. Were they not innocent?" Tharn closed his eyes. "You are right. Justice demands payment. But please, Admiral, if you must have your revenge, take me. Take my generals, my admirals, my government. Execute us all. Broadcast it across the galaxy if you wish. But spare the civilians. Let the Velic people survive." Taeyang was silent for a long moment. On one side of the bridge, Dr. Hana watched the exchange with cold eyes. She wanted to see Velic Prime burn. She wanted every Velic to feel the terror that humanity had felt. On the other side, Captain G1 stood with her arms crossed, her face unreadable. "Admiral," Hana said quietly, "they destroyed our cradle. We should destroy theirs." Before Taeyang could respond, Lieutenant Minho spoke from his station. The neural interface had degraded his speech patterns, making his voice flat and mechanical. "Fire," he said simply. "Complete the mission. Eliminate the target." Taeyang looked at the young pilot. Minho's eyes were empty, devoid of anything resembling humanity. The war had taken the boy he had been and left behind something else. "Something broken. Stand by," Taeyang ordered. He turned back to the screen. "Emperor Tharn, I will give you 1 hour to evacuate as many civilians as you can to the orbital stations. After that, I will begin the bombardment." Tharn's eyes widened. "You are giving us a chance?" 1 hour, Taeyang repeated. "Use it wisely." The transmission ended. Immediately, the bridge erupted in conversation. Hana stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "This is not the plan." "We agreed. I am the Admiral," Taeyang said quietly. "And I have made my decision." "You are showing them mercy," Hana said, her voice shaking. "After everything they did to us, after Earth, you are going to let them escape?" "I am giving them 1 hour to evacuate civilians," Taeyang said. "It is more than they gave us. But the planet will still burn. The Velic Empire will still fall. This changes nothing." "It changes everything," Hana said. "It shows weakness. The galaxy will think—" "I do not care what the galaxy thinks," Taeyang snapped. He turned to face her fully. "Earth is gone. Our people are dead. Nothing we do here will bring them back. But I will not become the same monster that destroyed our world. There must be a line we do not cross, or else we lose everything that made us human." Hana stared at him, her eyes glistening with tears. Then she turned and left the bridge without another word. On Velic Prime, chaos erupted. The Emperor's broadcast went out to every city, every town, every settlement. Civilians had 1 hour to reach the evacuation points. Shuttles launched from every spaceport, packed far beyond safe capacity. Parents carried children through crowded streets. The elderly were left behind, unable to move fast enough. Only a fraction of the population could be evacuated in time, perhaps 200 million out of 18 billion. The rest would have to take their chances in the deep shelters, the same way humanity had on Earth. The Velic Defense Fleet moved to attack the human armada. They knew they could not win, but they fought anyway, trying to buy time for the evacuations. Human ships with ghost drives phased through their formations, appearing behind their lines, striking at their flanks. The Velic ships fell one after another, dying in the cold void of space. Minho led Ghost Squadron in a relentless assault. His kill count had stopped meaning anything to him long ago. He was a weapon now, nothing more, A tool to be used and eventually discarded. He accepted this. He welcomed it, because the alternative was remembering what he had lost, and that would destroy what little remained of his mind. His fighter took a hit from a Velic missile. Warning alarm screamed. Systems failed. He felt the hull breach, felt the atmosphere venting. His vision dimmed as the oxygen levels dropped. Ghost leader is hit, someone reported. He is going down. Minho's last thought was of his sister. She had been 12 years old when Earth burned. She had liked to draw pictures of stars. He wondered if she had been afraid at the end. He hoped she had not suffered. Then his fighter exploded and Lieutenant Minho died alone in the darkness of space. On the Retribution, the tactical officer reported the loss. Taiyang closed his eyes briefly. Another good soldier dead. Another life consumed by the endless hunger of war. 1 hour has passed, Admiral, the officer said. Taiyang opened his eyes. He looked at the planet below, at the beautiful blue world that was home to billions of living beings. Beings with families, with dreams, with hopes for the future, just like humans had once been. Deploy the bombardment platforms, he ordered. Target all major cities. The platforms moved into position, massive structures carrying the same type of plasma weapons the Velic had used on Earth. They locked onto their targets. New York, Tokyo, Paris, Mumbai, Rio de Janeiro. Now it would be Velic cities that burned. Velic children who died screaming. Velic families who huddled together in their final moments. Weapons ready, Admiral, the tactical officer said, awaiting your order. Taiyang's hand moved to the communication panel. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. Every human who had survived the genocide would hear his next words. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. The moment of final revenge. Fire, he said. The first plasma charge descended through the atmosphere, a streak of white fire cutting through the sky. It struck the capital city, and a massive explosion bloomed outward. Buildings vaporized. The shockwave flattened everything for kilometers. 200 million Velic died in an instant. And then Taiyang thought of his daughter's music box. The broken melody it played, the last piece of her that remained in the universe. Cease fire, he said suddenly. The tactical officer turned to him in confusion. Admiral? I said cease fire, Taiyang repeated, his voice stronger. Shut down the bombardment platforms immediately. But sir, we have only destroyed one city. The plan has changed, Taiyang said. He opened the channel to Emperor Tharn again. The Emperor's face appeared, pale and trembling. Behind him, alarms were sounding. His people were dying. Your people will live, Taiyang said, but you will remember this moment forever. You will build monuments to Earth. You will teach your children what you did to humanity. You will make sure that every Velic knows the price of genocide. Tharn could barely speak. You are sparing us? I am giving you a warning, Taiyang said. One city has burned. 18 billion Velic still live. If any of your kind ever threatens humanity again, I will return. And next time there will be no mercy, no hesitation, no second chance. I will finish what I started here today. He ended the transmission and addressed his fleet. The Velic Empire surrenders unconditionally. Prepare to receive their formal capitulation. The war is over. Silence filled the bridge. Jiwon stepped forward slowly. Admiral, are you certain about this? No, Taiyang admitted. But I am certain that if we destroy... 5 years had passed since the end of the war. Admiral Taiyang stood in the memorial hall on Mars, surrounded by silence and ghosts. The chamber was vast, its walls stretching high above him. In the center floated a holographic image of Earth as it had been. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, beautiful and perfect and gone. Around the hologram, suspended in beams of light, were 12 billion names. Every human who had died in the Velic bombardment. It took hours to read through even a small section. Taiyang did not try. He simply stood there, feeling the weight of all those lost lives pressing down on him. His hair had turned gray in the years since the war. Lines marked his face, carved by stress and sleepless nights. He was 53 years old, but he looked much older. The war had aged him in ways that went beyond the physical. He reached into his coat and pulled out the music box. 5 years, and he still carried it everywhere. The mechanism barely worked anymore. When he wound the key, the melody stuttered and skipped. But he could still remember how it had sounded when his daughter played it. I did what I had to do, he said quietly to the names floating around him. I hope you understand. No answer came. The dead could not speak. They could only watch from whatever place they had gone, judging the choices of those who survived. Footsteps echoed behind him. Taeyang did not turn. He knew who it was. The memorial ceremony begins in an hour, Captain Jiwan said. The dignitaries are already arriving. Let them wait, Taeyang said. Jiwan moved to stand beside him. She looked older, too. The war had taken her husband and children, but it had also given her a new purpose. After the Velic surrender, she had been appointed governor of the occupied territories. It was her job to manage the integration of Velic populations into the new order. How are things in the former Velic sectors? Taeyang asked. Difficult, Jiwan admitted. The Velic people are traumatized. They live under human authority now. They work in our factories, serve in our administration, follow our laws. Some have adapted, others resist quietly. There are small rebellions sometimes, though nothing serious. Do they hate us? Yes, Jiwan said simply. But they also fear us. That fear keeps them in line. Taeyang was silent for a moment. Do you think we did the right thing? Sparing Velic Prime? Jiwan considered the question carefully. I do not know. Sometimes I think we should have finished what we started, made an example that no species would ever forget. Other times I remember that we stopped ourselves at the last moment, that we proved we were better than them. She paused. But I know that my children are still dead, and nothing we did brought them back. They stood together in silence, two survivors carrying the weight of an entire species on their shoulders. In a research facility on Europa, Dr. Hana sat alone in her quarters. The walls were bare except for a single photograph. Her family, smiling at the camera during a gathering 5 years ago, before the war. Before everything changed, she barely recognized the woman she had been in that photo. That Hana had believed in science for the sake of knowledge. She had wanted to explore the universe, to understand its mysteries. The Hana who existed now had created weapons that killed millions. She had designed the Ghost Drive, the Reaper virus, and a dozen other instruments of death. After the war ended, she had tried to return to peaceful research. She had founded a science colony dedicated to studying the outer planets, searching for signs of life, mapping the unknown regions of space. But the work felt empty, meaningless, because no matter what she discovered, it could not undo what she had done. The nightmares came every night. She would dream of Earth burning, of Velic colonies exploding, of bodies floating in space. Sometimes she could not tell the difference between human corpses and Velic corpses. In death, they all looked the same. She had tried to talk to other survivors about what she felt, but they did not understand. They saw her as a hero, the scientist who had given humanity the tools to win the war. They did not see the guilt that ate at her constantly. The knowledge that her weapons had killed children, families, innocents who had nothing to do with the attack on Earth. Hana reached for the bottle of pills on her desk. Sleep medication, prescribed by the medical officer, but even with the pills, the nightmares still came. There was no escape from what she had become. On a moon-orbiting Velic Prime, Emperor Tharn sat in his exile. His home was comfortable but small, a single building on a barren rock with no atmosphere. Through the reinforced windows he could see his homeworld in the distance, beautiful and alive and forever out of his reach. Every day he watched ships moving between Velic Prime and the orbital stations, human ships carrying human goods, enforcing human laws. His empire was gone. His people lived under occupation, and it was all because of his decision 5 years ago. He had replayed that moment 1,000 times in his mind. His military advisors had presented their analysis. Humanity was weak, they said. The humans had no real military power. A show of force would make them submit. He had believed them. He had given the order, and now he lived here alone, watching the consequences of that choice. Tharn often wondered why Admiral Taeyang had spared him. It would have been easier to execute him, to make him a symbol of Velic defeat. Instead, the human admiral had sentenced him to this, to watch his homeworld survive but never be able to return to it, to see his people live under human rule and know that he was responsible. It was a crueler punishment than death. In a military cemetery on Mars, a simple gravestone marked the resting place of Lieutenant Minho. There was no body to bury. His remains had been scattered across space when his fighter exploded. But his name was here, carved in stone, along with his final kill count. 412 enemy vessels destroyed. Other pilots came sometimes to pay their respects. They called him a hero, A legend, the greatest ace in human history. They told stories about his impossible maneuvers, his fearless attacks, his cold precision in battle. But none of them mentioned what the neural interface had done to him. How it had slowly eaten away his personality, his emotions, his humanity. How he had stopped being a person and become a weapon. How he had died alone, far from home, fighting for a species that had already forgotten what it was like to be at peace. The memorial ceremony began at sunset. Representatives from every human colony attended. Survivors of the genocide, military officers, civilian leaders, scientists, workers. They gathered in the Great Hall on Mars to remember the dead and honor the living. Admiral Tae Yang gave the opening speech. He talked about sacrifice and resilience, about how humanity had faced extinction and survived, about how they had built a new order from the ashes of the old, about how Earth would never be forgotten. The crowd listened in respectful silence. When he finished, they applauded. But Tae Yang felt no pride, only a deep, hollow exhaustion. After the ceremony, a young girl approached him. She could not have been more than 7 years old. Born after Earth's destruction, she looked up at him with wide eyes. "Admiral Tae Yang," she said, "my teacher told us about the war. She said you saved humanity. She said you defeated the Valak and made them pay for what they did." Tae Yang knelt down to her level. "What is your name?" "Sohee," the girl said. "Sohee," Tae Yang repeated softly. "Did your teacher tell you about Earth?" The girl nodded. She said it was beautiful. She said it had oceans and forests and animals. She said it was our home. "It was," Tae Yang said, "and the Valak destroyed it. They killed billions of people. Men, women, children, entire families. So you made them pay," Sohee said. "You destroyed their planet too." Tae Yang shook his head. "No, I almost did. But at the last moment I stopped. Do you know why?" The girl looked confused. "Because you were showing mercy?" "Partly," Tae Yang said. "But also because I realized something important. If I had destroyed Valak Prime, if I had killed all those billions of people, then I would have become exactly what I was fighting against. I would have proved that the Valak were right to fear us, that humans were nothing but monsters who deserved to be wiped out. But they were bad," Sohee said. "They killed us first." "They were," Tae Yang agreed. "But their children were not. The civilians on that planet had not made the decision to attack Earth. They were just living their lives the same way we were. And if I had killed them all, I would have created a new generation of Valak who grew up hating humanity, who would spend their lives plotting revenge just as we did." He placed a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "Sohee, I want you to remember something. Strength is not just about how hard you can hit. It is also about knowing when not to hit. About being strong enough to stop yourself even when you have every reason to continue. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us better than those who tried to destroy us." Sohee thought about this for a moment. "Did we win the war?" "Yes," Tae Yang said, "we won. But we also lost something along the way. Something important. What did we lose?" Tae Yang looked out at the crowd of survivors, at the memorial with its 12 billion names, at the red planet that had become humanity's new cradle. "Our innocence," he said quietly. "Our belief that the universe was fair. Our trust in the Galactic Council. Our hope that peace was always possible." He paused. "But we are still here. And as long as we remember what we lost, as long as we teach our children about Earth,